Hello, this is Laura Wogzogen, your math instructor for Honors Statistics. This is going to be a brief video about Project 3, just the introduction part of this. Look for other videos that will go over the more complex details of Project 3. But for right now, Project 3 is a lot different than Projects 1 and Projects 2. Those other two projects, I gave you data to use and asked you specific questions to answer. Project 3 is going to be a little bit different since you're going to be collecting your own data and thinking about your question that you want answered for this, your hypothesis. And so with that said, you'll notice that on Canvas you have a Project 3 module, and the first thing that's on there is our information for Project 3. And so Project 3 does have two variables that we're going to be working with. And so it's up to you to figure out what two variables you would like to use. I have a lot of students that are going to ask questions about what they want to find. And so I suggest looking at maybe something that you're interested in, or maybe a major that you are planning on going into. For simplicity, I'm going to use the example of height and foot length, and not one to be using for yourself for the project, since it is the one that I'm going to be talking about as we go through this. So those would be my two variables. And so I'm going to be looking at the populations I would be studying. Maybe I'm looking at college students, or maybe I'm looking at just female adults or children. So I need to be stating specifically who I am going to be studying for this. And then also the two variables that I'm going to be observing or collecting data from. And so maybe I can find this data online, and there are some information websites on here, as well as there's so much more online that you can find. Or maybe I am collecting the data myself. Maybe I work at a school and I can ask students for their foot length and also their height, and I can record those. So with that said, this goes through in just about data gathering. Go ahead and look through this. The method of sampling, you might have some flaws, things to think about. And then we will be using StatDisk to complete this. StatDisk is what we've been using for the other two projects, so hopefully we feel comfortable with this. The three things that we have are going to be confidence intervals, which are discussed in Chapter 7, test for normality, which was discussed in Section 6.5, and then depending on what you're doing, you would select only one of these hypothesis tests. And so we either have match pairs test for two means, test for two means independent samples, test for linear correlation, goodness of fit test, contingency tables test, and ANOVA. And all of those chapters and sections where they are covered are listed here. So you can go back and look either at the book, or you can look at your class notes for reference. There is also a list of all the due dates given below. So a lot of times students ask for ideas, and so I have just a few images here of some ideas that students have come up with in the past, as well as I did put links on here, websites for data sets. Those are just general data sets. A lot of students like to do sports data, so you can go to ESPN. There's also additional websites there for each specific sport. Healthcare data, and these are not limiting you, these are just references for you to use. There is so much more online. So you can use the census data. There's a lot more. So if you have any questions about this, make sure to ask. The next thing on here is we do have a grading rubric. And so the grading rubric is for you to kind of keep an eye on as you're going through this. I do want to just look at a few things on here, and I am going to look at the excellent column, since I know that we are honor students and we are all striving to be excellent. So the first part on here that we're going to be working on is our introduction and our conclusion. So for your introduction, it needs to be at least a paragraph long, clearly explaining your purpose of the project. Why are you doing this? Your hypothesis, a clear conclusion, that's going to be at the very end of this. Don't stress about that yet, but right now the introduction is something that you want to think about. You'll notice that there's confidence intervals, test for normality, and your one additional test, like we had already said. Then you'll also notice a big part of your grade is meeting deadlines. There's going to be 4 deadlines. They were all listed on that project information sheet at the very beginning of this video. And then also you get a little bit of points for just organizing your project. It needs to be typed, organizing it well. Also, making sure you attach your data, because I will be checking all of your calculations to make sure everything's done correctly, but I do need the data in order to be able to do that. So that's our rubric, so make sure you keep an eye on that. And then we do have a proposal. And so the proposal on here is a file, and you'll notice that that has a due date and its assignment, and so you're going to be uploading it. And so the proposal is just for me to gain an understanding of what it is that you are wanting to study for this class. What are your project 3 going to be about? So the questions that it asks are, what populations are you studying? The 2 variables, are they quantitative or qualitative? You might have to look back at your chapter 1 notes if you don't remember some of these vocab words. It does go on and says, what is your hypothesis about the relationship between these 2 variables? Maybe for me it might be, I believe that there's a linear relationship, so it's a chapter 10 problem, between foot length and height. And I might think that, or say that maybe as your height increases, your foot length would also increase. And then, is this a study observational or is it an experiment? How much data are you planning to obtain? And it should be at least 30 for each variable. So that means if I'm collecting data on people's, and I'll just say adults, shoe length or foot length and height, then I need to make sure I collect it from 30 individuals. I have had students that compare 2 different things, maybe 2 different national parks, and let's just say Yosemite and Sequoia, and maybe if you're doing something along those lines, then I'm going to have to collect 30, maybe it's on average rainfalls every month or rainfall every year in Yosemite, and then likewise 30 for Sequoia National Park. How will you gather your sample data? So if it's going to be something, maybe you're a survey, you're sending something out, or maybe you're collecting it from maybe classmates, or maybe from an online source, make sure it's stated. That does need to be also explained in your introduction. So the first thing is going to be this proposal. This is the first due date that we have. For this is for me to get an understanding of where you want to go with your project. This also starts the dialogue between you and me to make sure that we understand if this might be too hard to do, or maybe some ideas or suggestions on how to improve this. This is also something that can always be changed. So a lot of times students, because this is your own ideas, they start this and then they realize partway through that, you know what, I don't really want to do this project anymore. I would like to do something different. That's okay. You are always able to go back and change your ideas. So if maybe you submit this on time, but then you want to go back maybe like a couple weeks later and you're like, never mind, I don't want to do it on height and foot length, I want to do it on now national parks, then I'm going to go ahead and resubmit this so that way I can give you feedback and we start, again, that communication. I would also suggest that if you have questions, a lot of times the best thing to do is stop by office hours. So do remember that I have both in-person and online office hours, so check the syllabus and check Canvas for those times, and you can always email me also, but a lot of times it's easier to have those conversations one-on-one. So this is the first part that's due. This is our first due date. For this assignment is going to be this project proposal. The next thing that we have is going to be our introduction. And so with the introduction, you're going to upload your introduction paragraph here. And so your introduction should include a purpose of the project, a clear hypothesis, what you're planning to show in the project, and any additional information. It should be about 1 paragraph long. So you're going to be uploading this as a PDF file. This also gives me an opportunity to ask questions. And you also want to make sure you start off your project with something. It shouldn't just be like, this is my stats project. It should be something along the lines of, I have always visited national parks and I'm very interested in them and was looking at the rainfall that occurs over the past 40 years at Yosemite and Sequoia. So having some kind of reason why somebody should read this project is also part of this. So you want to make sure that you make it interesting, engaging, have an explanation of why you want to do this, what you're hoping to show, your hypothesis, and also make sure to include any additional information that you need. So this is just our introduction. We're not yet getting into any of the statistics parts behind here. We will get into that into our second video. But for right now, please reach out if you have any questions. I know this seems intimidating, especially coming up with your own idea, but trust me, if you have any questions, please talk to me, let me know, and we will work through this. Best of luck, and go explore some data sets.